Good morning, Stephen.
Good morning, Kevin.
Well, right off the bat, what do you think of the Ascension Island plan?
Well, I think we discussed this probably about 6 months ago when we said it was a good idea that the government has extra plans in case Rwanda didn't work. We looked at the Ascension Islands as a British protectorate, and we've also looked at other islands that we think that we could put out. And I think this is a good, positive thing for us to do, because the more places that we can send those who are coming across the channel to gives a warning to the people, smugglers, that they won't be able to stay in Britain. We only got to do what we've always said, make it work. And so far, Rwanda hasn't. So why would this?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, won't there be objections to Ascension Island just as there are objections to Rwanda? Now, of course, Rwanda, incorrectly and unfairly, is being depicted by the lefties who just want everyone to come to this country just completely willy-nilly. They'll say, they say that Rwanda's a hellhole, a homophobic hellhole. It's not, but there you go. As I said earlier, they'll no doubt say, Ascension Island, full of homophobes, absolute nightmare, war, torture. Well, they can't say that about Ascension Island, but I suspect the reason that our Rwanda scheme keeps failing in the European courts, the human rights courts, is not because it's a homophobic hellhole, because it isn't, but because they just don't like the idea of us flying migrants anywhere. So I think the Ascension Island scheme, decent though it is, I agree with you, will fail for the same reasons as Rwanda.
Oh, there's absolutely no doubt. I was laughing there as you were saying the lawyers and the NGOs and the charities and the unions will all get behind them once again to find the funding to take the government to court and use judicial review processes to slow down the scheme. Then it'll go into the Commons, no doubt, and then face the House of Lords doing it once more, and then we'll find more appeals individually, and maybe even a trade union or two to say that even the planes flying out to Ascension Island might be unsafe to take them there as well.
Of course, yeah.
We know this will all happen. It doesn't mean that the idea is bad, as we know it could be positive for actually trying to prevent two things. One is people smugglers having the genuine belief, as they do at the moment, that they can get anybody into Britain and stay there and therefore charge reasonable fees. And secondly, as a deterrent for economic migrants, as we know, roughly around 60% of them, according to the European Commission.
Indeed. Also, of course, today, Stephen, a very big day. After 3 weeks of standing empty in the tiny port of Portland in Dorset, the Bibby Stockholm migrant barge will finally get its first residents, we're told today. Frankly, I'll believe it when I see it. Of course, it's been empty for 3 weeks because they said it's a fire risk. Now, for half a century, nearly half a century. It was commissioned in 1976 in Barbados, of all places. The Bibby Stockholm barge has been sailing around the world. It's been home to migrants. It's been home to homeless people, mainly construction workers all over the world, including the Shetlands for a while. A long time in Holland. Never once has it had a fire. But anyway, we've finally got to the end of the fire checks, the fire checks that were so necessary. And there's nothing else the objectors can do to stop it. So it looks as if it will take on board its first residents. And for me, my sympathy lies with the long-suffering residents of Portland. Only 12,000 of them. They got one copper, one GP, 509 in the end, new residents, young, unemployed males. They are migrants, of course. I can't see that, what could possibly go wrong? It's a recipe for disaster, isn't it?
I think what we're going to see is I'd be surprised if there isn't a last-minute legal claim over some issue or other. But if it does go ahead, of course, we've seen over the last couple of weeks thousands more arrive across the channel. We probably needed 5 or 6 bibbies just to house those who've arrived in the last couple of weeks. I do feel sorry for those people in Portland, but I feel sorry for also the other towns where the bus services are going to be on offer to transport these young men on a daily basis, who also have the opportunity to have nights out and stay overnight somewhere, wherever they're supposed to. with outside of their curfew. So this is going to be a tremendous strain on the economy and of the physicality of the places that these people reside. And it always goes back to the same question. When are we going to be able to have a system where we can remove those who just genuinely are not asylum seekers here? And when are we going to have a system that really strengthens our own borders to prevent them coming in the first place?
Let me ask you this. I put this point to my presenter's friend, Russell Quirk, earlier. I like that phrase, presenter's friend. You get these friendships imposed on you. Your presenter's friend, it's like, it's not no friend of mine. But anyway, Russell is a friend of mine, so it worked. It works in this instance. But I was saying to him earlier, what are we going to do about this £500 million we gave to the French? I think it was back in March. Rishi Sunak, Look, I've given Macron £500 million. Isn't that wonderful? We're going, not especially, Rishi, really. But anyway, what have we got in return for it? Absolutely nothing. Given that we've given them a massive amount of money to patrol their own beaches, shouldn't we say to Macron now, listen, mate, unless you do something with that £500 million we've given you, because we know what you've done with it so far. You've tiptoed off to the bank, stuck it in, the French account, one of the few accounts that aren't being closed down by left-wing bankers. So they put the money in there and done nothing. So I would say to them, look, you do something. Because ever since you took our money, we've had record numbers of migrants coming across the channel. So you stop that, or we're going to start turning the boats round and towing them back to you. How about that?
Well, if we'd have done that a long time ago, we wouldn't have had this particular problem. It started in 2019, when the issue started to become more serious and used the law of the sea, SOLAS, where we had an option where it is actually mentioned in a Home Affairs Select Committee that we're able to use SOLAS to return boats to France, then we certainly wouldn't be in this position, and we wouldn't be providing the French with huge sums of money. I remember in 2014, Kevin, when I was the only and the first a member of the European Parliament at the time to go to the camp that we funded in Calais, when the issue was beginning to rise once more. And it was deeply surprising to hear that we gave them another 125 million, the French, several months later. The boats have never stopped. Those coming across on the ferries have never stopped. Those coming on the backs of lorries have never stopped. And we had 21,000, according to a Freedom of Information request recently, come across last year as well.
Memo to Rishi, just, if nothing else, please, 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 stop giving the French money. There's no point. It has had no results whatsoever. It's unbelievable. A couple of other migrant stories, Stephen, to quickly cover with you, if you don't mind. The first, I think, is interesting. The Labour Party, Keir's Labour warriors, who've opposed every single element of the government's migrant plan, plan A, plan B, plan C. No, inhuman, can't do that. No, you can't put them on barges. No, that's terrible, 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 terrible. Guess what? They're now admitting that if they do, horror of horrors, win the next election, they will have to continue using barges, disused air bases, renovated derelict prisons, etc., etc. In other words, what they're now saying, after years of vehement objection, is, well, we'll just carry on with the Tories' plan, if that's all right.
Well, absolutely. They're facing up to the reality that it's costing the government about £8 billion a year for the asylum and immigration system, from the running of the Home Office, Border Force, legal fees, education, health, housing, that they have no solutions to it, because the only solution that could be successful is the one that we've mentioned already, that is returning them to France. And they won't do that because of their Europhile nature in their political party. I think also they're coming up to the realization that there is nothing else that they can do internationally. And as we've called for many, many times, for a kind of renegotiation or an international convention on changing the rules of the UN Refugees Convention to exclude economic migrants. So they're facing reality, Kevin, that they can't do anything, and anything that they will do will be putting them to the same charges of racism, xenophobia, etc., that they've been calling the Conservatives and anyone who open door migration in the past.
Yeah, they're going to collide with reality, as everybody in politics knows. Opposition is easy, government is not.